Yeah. Mickey wanted me to go and watch Sven with Trinity 4 in Norwich, walking around some of the churches. The whole point, I think, of putting this in is that when me and Mickey go out and look at churches now, everything is just an add-on. There's not one church where it's just one building. You can see where it's been added on. And that's exactly what Trinity 4 and Sven are saying.
Yeah.
And also that it looks old, and it looks really old. Old doors, stop it. But it may be not. It may be only 100 years old. It's all a bit confusing, really. But the one thing that it seems to be is that all these buildings are brick, and they've covered it up with the flint and then told us that that's the Normans or something. That's a Norman church.
And history on it.
Or whatever it is they've told you. And they're covering up brick buildings because they don't want us to realise how long the brick's been here and how long the buildings have been. You know, Shaw House was 1581. Bet that's brick as well in there.
Wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me.
Yeah. And it just goes back further and further, more than we can say. But what it is we're going to add a bit of this walk around. But towards the end, at the very end, the microphone gets a little bit faint. But hopefully you can hear that they're basically, Trinity 4 is just saying, it's not real. None of this is real.
Yeah.
And he also thinks, and I know what he's kind of talking about. When I was younger, there was a programme called Time Tunnel.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you've got the circle which goes round and round and round. And he goes into that and then he disappears into an unknown future. And then they just start blinking. And in the people who he's left, they just blink and he's back. But in his world, he could have gone off for a month or 6 months and saved the world. And then when he comes back, they finish their blink. And so, in a sense, I've told Mickey this loads of times. I thought maybe that's how crop circles happened. But Marie Wheatley told me that most crop circles are handmade. And you're like, really? But anyway, I imagine that if it was even like that then, like it was like we would blink and then the crop circle would be there. And we didn't see it happen, but somebody put it there. And then whatever it is. And this is kind of what Trinity 4 is saying. That these things, because now it's all getting a bit weird, isn't it? It's like, it doesn't feel right, does it?
No, not when you're seeing it with your own eyes. It's very.
I mean, that church we saw today was nothing like any of these, except it did have a bit of a flint building at the back, but the main part of the church had completely different windows.
Yeah, it's younger. The one at the back is older.
I thought it was the other way round.
No, the one with the flint is the original. That's the J700s. Yeah.
See, but you see that was flint and this is flint, but this isn't. This is brick. Most of the churches, they're hiding the brick. I find that weird, but they obviously don't want us. Because do you remember I've done the videos where cannons, guns, shoes, beds,
don't change.
Whatever it was, it didn't change for hundreds of years. Boats, the armadas, nothing changed much for hundreds of years. Hundreds, like maybe 800 years. It was all kind of the same. Maybe on a wheel, we'd gone from a wooden wheel to a wheel with a rim on it. Or, and then it all started picking up in the 1900s. Then the guns started changing, the ships started, it all seemed to change then. But it's a bit wicked, isn't it? That what it seems is there's always a really old part of the church, and then they build round it or on top of it, around it, and make it, and then they keep building and adding, and why would they want them this big?
Going to worship there,
because people don't go to church for this kind of thing anymore, and even if they did, it was for such a short period. Why are these churches so big and had so much money spent on them?
Town gets bigger, and
but the people are not going to the churches. It started, you know,
When did
if
you
you were talking of the 1950s
Well,
and
churches.
60s and 40s, maybe people did. But as you got to the 80s, whatever, it was all tapering off. And now the congregation has probably got like 10, if he's
Yeah,
lucky.
but that's the thing. They're small churches.
That's not small church, that's a huge church.
That's Adam.
That's a cathedral, I think. And there's a bit at the back.
Yeah, again.
Like,
yeah, just there, yeah.
up at the back of the building, there's, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
we've
it's
been
small-
going for long enough.
But smaller, it's,
We just wanted to...
small parish.
There's a load of us that are now seeing this other stuff in the churches that we didn't see before.
Not right. Yeah.
So we've been lied. It's like a lie upon a lie upon a lie upon a lie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah. Lie upon a lie. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we're finishing now, and leave your comments afterwards. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome from the city of Norwich. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having a nice weekend, enjoying the weather, certainly here in the UK. Lovely sunny days have been had. From what I'm hearing and reading, it's supposed to get much hotter next week, so we'll see. Excuse the noise there. So basically what's happened is we have a day off today on the Globe Light Tour, and we decided to leave yesterday and come straight to Norwich and then spend a couple of days here so we can stay in one location. So what we've done is we've all kind of chipped together and we're all living in a big sort of Airbnb. And Trinity 4, Dave and I decided that late this afternoon we could go out and have a little walk around and do a little bit of filming and looking at some buildings. And interestingly enough, as soon as we walk up the hill, while Dave is chalking behind me, we walked up a hill asking people where the cathedral is, and we of course stumble across buildings of this size on the way to the cathedral. So we have this one here. And then it's quite funny, and then you turn right and then you have a massive church there, and this is all up a steep slope, by the way. And then you go beyond those buildings, and we'll show you in a minute, but other side of those is a big cathedral that we can see from our house where we're living. But so I've showed you that building there.
It's a big one, isn't it?
That is a big one. I mean, it's not even supposedly the standout building of the city, but yet it would dwarf any other place of worship in most other towns.
Yeah, but it did have 73 parishioners, and between them on the weekends, in their spare time, they just knocked us up, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Old ladies were up there. It was very hazardous. I mean, there's reports of many people, at least, 72 or something like that, having just, died in the process. So there was only actually one guy left in the village, and then he realized that, shit, this wasn't actually impressive enough. So he thought, let's do a cathedral.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should always build a cathedral if we're not too sure what to build.
Yeah.
Because A, you wouldn't know how much resources you'd need, so you wouldn't know if you're going to run out.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be such a conundrum.
Why do we go and have a look?
So let's have a look. We're going to basically go and have a little walk around.
Oh, bloody hell, that's a bit of a problem there, isn't it? With that window, would you build like that, Sven?
I personally wouldn't. Well, how about you, Dave?
Oh, I build like that all the time.
Really?
And, yeah, I use it for, I put the odd a little coal down there.
Right,
you know?
okay.
And sometimes if I want, extra light in my dungeon, I use that as well. So,
Right.
But most of the time I just make it a dungeon with the bars.
Yeah, so you think having bars in front of it also serves as a practical use, doesn't it, for accessibility and stuff?
Well, people think that it's to stop people getting in, but generally these are all dungeons, they're for keeping slaves and that kind of thing.
Yeah, indeed.
Obviously, to get to the garden of these places, you normally have to go through the slaves' quarters, but that's a long story.
That's a long story, yeah, that we touched on yesterday,
Oh,
indeed.
there's a dinosaur. They must be real.
Oh, look, yeah, there is a dinosaur. In fact, we've got one there in the distance. They're nice, colourful ones as well to get the kids' attention. Oh, right, and then, of course, round the corner, Dave, there's another church.
Well, it's
At the
really
top of the
more a
hill.
tiny chapel, really.
It's a tiny
What
chapel.
it would have been designed for is just like a resting spot for the labourer.
Right.
There was only one labourer, obviously, at that time, but he needed a small place for him to take his lunch break, so they knocked this up you know, on a long weekend, a bank holiday weekend.
Indeed.
And they knocked this up. And
Before the football. Yeah.
yeah, did they have football in? Had they invented the globe yet?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I'm sure they were kicking things about in general, you know, that we now call football.
Yeah, people don't like to let go of their ball.
No, they don't like to let go of their ball. That is one of the issues,
Some
isn't
blokes
it?
are really attached, welded almost,
They are.
to their ball. And their narrative that horse and cart.
Shall we, right. Horse and cart, yeah.
St. Michael at Plea.
So this one's called St. Michael at Plea. Yeah, and you see this obviously everywhere, this sort of structure. And these are big enough. I mean, if you had these in a small town, that is a structure enough in itself to try and build that in the days that you, you know, you didn't have the equipment. And, well, you didn't even have the population you have now. And I don't buy in, by the way, to the idea that we have 7-point-something billion. I think that's all fabricated as well to make part of the depopulation that's going on almost a little bit acceptable. Desensitize people to the notion. But anyway, that's another story. I'm going off tangent there. But we're just walking down another street in Norwich. I've never been to Norwich. All I know it's in Norfolk. There's an area around here called the Norfolk Broads, very famous, where a lot of barging goes on and canals and all that sort of stuff. But I've never been here. Claims to fame, I think English mustard, Coleman's mustard comes from Norwich, and I think the Lotus car was manufactured in Norwich, if I'm not mistaken, or still is.
Look at the windows, under the window.
But take a look at this. You know. So you can see evidence of mud flood literally everywhere. This is not roads being lifted up. If you lifted them up, you'd have them straight. But you can see there. So you've got 1, 2, 3. And of course you could say, well, you're going down a slope. Yeah, you are going down a slope. But the building that we're walking past continues to go straight down 90 degrees to the ground. Anyway, and on the other side, just for good measure, you can see here as well what they call the coal chutes. Of course, they're just repurposed. But yeah, oh, this was called Red Well Street. The old well was on the corner of Queen Street. There we go. So water again, you know, the access to water key. So let's have a walk across here. I'm not going to make it, but I shall do in a minute. There's a cathedral in the background that we're going to, with a very, very long spire. And of course, you know, this is the conversation I had about Salisbury Cathedral, which also is renowned for a long spire. How do you manage to get up there to do anything, never mind build something, right? And again, you know I'm preaching to the choir for a lot of people, but for those who are new to the topic or new to the idea of paying a bit more attention to their surroundings when they're walking around, you know, you have to ask yourself, and it's okay to do so, how do you build these? Think about all the stuff you would have needed, starting with a sizable population, because you need a sizable pool of people to be able to then glean your expertise from, etc., etc. Never mind the logistics. You know, we weren't mechanized, we were agricultural. You do not build stuff like that if that's a society that you have. Anyway, we'll get up closer in a minute. But here we're going through what probably officially will be called part of the town wall. Very beautiful. Lots of facading. You can see that by the erosion here. So if you go across here, it's what I was talking about with the other buildings in Bournemouth and stuff, you know. Chipped away. You know, down that hill there. So the top of the hill with the pink house at the end of it, that is probably my head height. About a 6-foot drop. Okay, so we come around here. This is the interior. Let's have a look. It's almost as if you could turn this into a cathedral, isn't it? And pretend you're actually building a brand new one, when in actual fact what you're doing is you're using constructions that are stood around to then encompass them and introduce the notion of religions and introduce then places of worship. You do this, of course, before you let the civilizations rip and let them out into the world. So you have all that in place, of course, but yeah, look at that. And of course, this is one of my favorites. I remember as a kid always being told that the entrances to these buildings were so small because people were not as well nourished back in the day. Really? Were they all midgets? I don't think so, because why do you have huge entrances in cathedrals? What's happened here is the ground, of course, is higher than it should be, and in that way they explain the fact that it's not very tall. That's all that's going on there. Right, now we've entered, well, we're going towards the cathedral entrance, which is over there. I mean, it's a beautiful day. Right, again, I'm focusing on the cathedral, but I'm missing all this here. Look, you see a lot of these, if you ever see pictures of Downing Street in London and the Prime Minister and all that, and they've all got these kind of entrances here, haven't they? With, of course, extreme amounts of symbolism behind them, but, you know, very almost Mary Poppins, Dickensian, Victorian, whatever you want to call it. All right, but then when you take a closer look, you know, you see all of this. Well, I'm not seeing anything. Well, yeah, you will. Prism lighting. For good measure. There you go. That goes over here. There's a window that goes to that concrete flooring, which of course that concrete flooring, those slabs, that'll only be halfway up. That's not the actual bottom of the construction. You can see that because of the very low windows. You wouldn't build windows that low. And all this and lower than the ground I'm standing on. And then you have a cathedral over there. Evidence of mud flood everywhere. That is not people simply bringing the road up so that they can make it all neat and tidy. That is not what's going on here. You know, and we're quite far up a hill here as well. All right. Anyway, just some food for thought. Again, prism lighting. And again. And then, yeah. And it's all a bit of a hodgepodge as well. So Dave, yeah, just looking at the prism lighting there and plenty of evidence of mud flood.
Yeah.
And the retaining walls.
Yeah. The retaining walls make no sense, man. I saw a retaining wall the other day, 6 inches from the wall that it's in front of me. Like,
why would you do that?
Doing that?
Who's working there? Ants? You know, you're never going to fit in there. You're not even going to get your tools in there. So there we are. So this is Norwich Cathedral, and what a beauty. You know, wooden cranes and rope pulleys did the trick, right? Clearly.
You know, I was just commenting, I made a video myself, I was just commenting on that it is beautiful, and inside I think we're going to be amazed, but it's actually quite a simple cathedral as those things go. It's not complex, and it's not like Canterbury, and it's not got the size of Liverpool. It's absolutely beautiful, and I take nothing away from it, but I'm not overawed by the size of it, by comparison to some. But yeah, you know, amazing. Have we spoken about Mandela effect and this cladding?
Not together, no.
So I've got this idea, obviously just a theory, of course, but this idea that one way to, if we can change, they can change a thing in the Bible, or they can change a thing in some other material thing, then could there be a Mandela effect cladding? So like in an electromagnetic world, the coder could write code that would clad these buildings almost instantaneously. And where you don't have the problem of the vast amounts of labor that the 17 residents of the town had to undertake. So that's just a theory. Because I look at this, since we've been talking about it, I look at it in absolute awe and go,
yeah.
Even if it's just cladding,
Yeah.
30 years of, you know, how even today we could not pull off that amount of cladding for that many buildings to try and, you know, operate. And, you know, we've got a fraction of the population. We've got almost none of the technology. I just can't see it being done, you know. So the longer I argue for cladding, the more I have to consider the possibility that the programmer is a bit like Disneyland. They can, you know, send their engineers overnight. It might be 100 years in human times, but they could send the engineers in overnight and reclad everything by just using frequency to take the ether and turn it into these shapes. And that's why often they have these cymatic patterns to them, because they've simply frozen them out of the freaking material or ether or whatever, and being able to just go and fill this whole building, because I am just overawed by the amount of work involved here.
Yeah, and that's, like we said, just the cladding alone, right? So, you know,
just the cladding.
Just
I
the
mean,
cladding.
the inside, it's another story. I think the inside's a different story altogether. I don't think they necessarily share the same timelines, you know? I'm not convinced that we're always looking at the same building when we see the cladding and the inside.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, it's hodgepodgey, isn't it? It's kind of, they've added, and I suppose in different periods, perhaps.
They admit that themselves. Oh no, it was started, you know, in 1300, and then we built this little outhouse. Then we built on the rest of that. We built the nave, and then, you know, some other period we built this shit. It's like, nah, come on, man, that's not the way you would build it. Particularly with the Liverpool one, where what's his name, Ewanon had said that, you know, that was right and proper, that they should build the Queen's Chapel and then, or the Lady Chapel, I think it's called. And then build the main building. Oh, no. You build the main house, and then you build the servants' quarters. You know, you don't engineer everything around the servants' quarters. And the Lady Chapel is beautiful. It's at a completely different floor level to the rest of the cathedral. Yeah. And you know, that just adds such a vast complexity of construction requirements and so forth. And even below that Lady Chapel, there's 20 foot of basement.
Right,
you know, so no. The idea that these things are...
And that was supposed to be happening in 1900. So even though they supposedly had the technology then, that was very in its primitive time, you know. It's not like you had the cranes you have now and the diggers you have
Everyone
now.
in our families would be builders. If
yes,
there'd been
that's
so
the
much
point,
building work going on, everyone in our family would be a builder. But they were all flower workers.
Yes, they were all plucking tulips, trying to compete with the Dutch. And but yet they managed to knock these things up. And of course, every household had a stonemason. You know what I mean? And they made their bricks on site. Well, you know, you have to remember that behind all of this that you're seeing, behind a lot of this cladding are red bricks. You know, a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen it.
Yeah, where was I? I was in Liverpool as well, where I saw a broken down big church. Could have been a semi-cathedral size.
Right.
And the outside was all cladding. Inside, you could see through the building to the other side. Piggly red brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is but I've just got this idea that, I mean, obviously this is form work. I think we're all in agreement now that this is formed, it's poured or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's shaped.
Yeah, it's not chiseled.
It's not chiseled.
No.
And you know, I know we can do that in the modern time, and this lady here looks like a modern, you know, version of that. I think the older ones that also broke away and whatnot. Oh, lovely gargoyles. I'm gonna tell you what, the testicle one I saw the other day.
Where were you there when you saw that? Was that Winchester or somewhere?
No, that was in Gloucester.
Oh, right.
Gloucester Cathedral, they got a gargoyle with his testicles hanging out. Shit, you know.
Beautiful.
Hey,
hello.
It's amazing in that building. Have you been in there?
No, we're just about to go.
It goes on forever.
Is it?
Enormous.
I was just playing it down a little bit.
So we're live streaming right now. So
He's live streaming.
good. Yeah. So if you want to go on my channel, you can watch the show, or you can partake. So we've just been joined by Dean and Sarah, who we met yesterday whilst doing the activism in Cambridge, which is nice. So we're kind of gonna, Dave and I will talk about it, blah blah blah, and then we'll kind of do it together if they want to, and take a closer look at this building. We will go inside in a bit, and I can warn you now that if I go inside and the stream cuts out and I notice, then I will leave and come back outside as soon as I do notice that. You know, so just letting you know, because I would like to have that streamed as well, because I've been already told that it's well worth going in to have a look. Anyway, let's have a listen to what we've got to say.
So I know they say say, oh, this is a sandstone, so failing, but I am pretty certain this is all formed. And I was just saying to Sven, I think it could even be Mandela affected, like this whole building just gets done like that, just like a Mandela effect, because there's too much of it. There's so much of this ladding all over the world. And in every city has
Hi Deborah, nice for you to meet us. What's up here? Hi Dee. Hi Vaughan. Hi Tony mate, how's it going? Yes, I'm just got to get used to reading the chat because I've not been doing that and I wasn't really planning on going live today, but now I am. Keep my eye on the chat. Nice of you to join us. Beautiful day. How's the weather where you guys are?
Foreigners for those kinds of things. I think World War II prisoners were sometimes taken to other places and used there to dig. I think maybe World War I trench digging was digging out stuff from the mud. That's what they were actually getting them to do, was to dig out the mud for them to find stuff.
See that
Ashenone, all that. Yeah.
How crumbly that all is.
Yeah. I mean, it's not consistent with stone. Now, I have to accept that sandstone might have a very, like very rough, a very, but you'd think these things have been designed to last, but we certainly see a lot of new ones replacing them or patchwork done. This might be a bit of patchwork here. Done too. That's the way they fade. Yeah, that's the way it fades away. This one is newer. And as you can see, it's cast. I think you can see quite clearly underneath it. That would have been cast. No one's carving that like that. Underneath her dress.
Yeah.
That's a cast. And it's actually sections. You can see halfway up her dress. It's cut there. Yeah. So it's all a big scam, and someone knows that. Someone knows that they're actually doing this in that way. All the repairing of cathedrals and so on. It's not being done by stone cutters.
No. Which means they have the capabilities to do them.
You got some musicians here. They're going to play for us.
Let's hope so. Well, we're going to have some accompanying music by the sounds of things.